Sustained performance in footy is more than just one great game. It's the same with your super. Host Plus is a super fund with a history of long-term top performance. Host Plus, we go with you.
This is general advice only. Consider the relevant Host Plus PDS available at hostplus.com.au before deciding if Host Plus is appropriate for you. Past performance is not a reliable indicator of future performance.
This is the SEN Breakfast Monday Microscope with Gary Lyon, Tim Watson and Kane Corns.
It's great to have you with us. Andrew Gase to join us this morning and Zach Merritt as well. But big weekend of footy. We've missed this man for the last couple of weeks. He's been doing an outstanding job on SEN Flip. 5 hours of radio. It's a pretty solid gig, Kano. Welcome.
Thank you, Gary. G'day, Tim. Yeah, no, it was great, actually. And obviously, we did a magnificent job with Jared covering the Olympics, but to be able to talk footy with everyone was still important, which I enjoyed. So for everyone who tuned in, it was great. We all know those people who take tipping really seriously, don't we? I was going to say, I don't know Tim all that well, but from what I listen from time to time of your show, he does take it pretty seriously. So, Tim, it was a rough week for tipsters. We've had 8 games. How many did you get?
I've got no idea, Kane.
2.
I gave up. Of course
you do.
I gave up.
2.
I gave up a little while ago. I had some communication with the Herald Sun. They said, "Look, you won it last year. Do you mind just stepping down at the halfway mark just to give others a chance?" So I obliged. So I really don't know where I'm at on the tipping competition at the moment.
It was a rough weekend for tips.
Was it? Okay,
How
I'll
can
take
you
your
tip?
word for that.
How can you tip, given that you can't climb inside the head of half of these teams who will turn up one week and go, you know what? Just not feeling it today, so the whole lot of them just go through the motions and it's a really apathetic. And then 5, 6, 7 days later, they go, right. And I'm looking at St Kilda, lost to Carlton last week and then came out and played the best contested team in the competition and put them to the sword. And then I can go through them, Kano. The Suns against Melbourne beat Carlton. Carlton defeats St Kilda, lose to the Suns. The Lions lose to the Hawks. What about the Lions? They are Exhibit A for me.
Yep.
Their loss to Hawthorn was just passive, and then they were ferocious against Freo, and you can add Freo who beat Richmond the week before. Explain, anyone?
It's half the competition, isn't it?
Yep.
And you've named. I mean, we could name and shame the teams that their referees.
Everyone's had their moment, but the ones at the top end have had less of them.
Yep. So you can't question the likes of Sydney. I mean, Port Adelaide pretty much show up most weeks. You would think they've been missing.
Melbourne have done it.
Yeah, Melbourne have done occasionally. Geelong have done it. The Giants do it regularly, but you understand with their injuries. But I think the ones you mentioned, Carlton, St Kilda, Brisbane this year are the biggest offenders of that.
I just want to throw this one out there, okay, Gary? You're the key forward here. Kane, I'd be interested in your thoughts on this too. Josh Bruce,
swingman.
we are expecting to hear from the Bulldogs today that Josh Bruce has done his ACL, right? So that wipes him out for the rest of the year and most of next year as well. Fundamentally, how critical is this to their chances now of being able to contest for the flag or win the flag, Gary, in your mind, him not being available?
Critically important. Makes it doesn't rule them out completely, but it makes it a hell of a lot harder, given that the focus now will go to Norton. Jamara Ugle-Hagan, really important that they got games into him. He was no lock to get there in finals, I reckon, given what we've seen. But they've been able to play him and have some experience. Now, had they not done that and Bruce hurts himself, then they would have been in a much more difficult position. But, look, I think Alex Keefe and Gardner is just as important at the other end of the ground, but it makes it a hell of a lot harder, Kane.
Yeah, it does, no doubt, and just those bigger, experienced bodies around the younger players is what's crucial in finals. And now you're starting to get not just one issue up one end of the ground, and we saw, who would have thought Peter Wright could kick 7 on the Western Bulldogs, one of the top teams. So there's clearly an issue that we've spoken about how many times on this show about their defensive issues. If there's another injury there, now they've got one up the other end. So does Shaki go forward? What happens when Keith comes back? Starts to be a bit of a juggling act.
It does, and you get 2 home and away games to have a look at that and try and come up with a new formula. Jamara, we all know he's going to be a fine AFL player, but he's not going to be somebody that lights it up. I don't think at the pointy end of the season with the pressure that comes.
Not in finals.
No, the pressure is extraordinary in finals for particularly young key forwards.
And we're talking big finals. We're not talking like a first semi or something. We expect them to go deep.
Yeah, Gary, Tim English, is it possible if Martin comes back into that side and he can take the ruck duties? Can you see Tim English more than holding his own as a 4 type target for them?
Yeah, I think that's what they'll do. I mean, Tim English was monstered by Sam Draper. I thought Draper was outstanding in that game yesterday. But, yeah, so you talk about players who are out and how important they are. Steph Martin's ability to come back from his injury is going to be just as significant. So if he can come back, even if he does come back, and then he's going to have to ruck through a real competitive final series. In answer to your question, yes, English is the option for them forward to partner the big fella Aaron Norton.
And whether Bontempelli just a little bit more time for. I mean, they do have enough talent in their list to be able to have options to be able to pull. And just his third quarter, he's just playing. And he's just a threat. Honestly, you got to sit back and admire some of the stuff he's doing. And if you're not quick and you don't see it because it's that good.
Okay, I'm watching him yesterday, and it's like at times, with all those players out there on the ground, he looks like he's at another level to the other players out there on the ground. It's like, when you watch Michael Jordan back in the day and he was playing basketball for the Chicago Bulls and you thought, okay, well, this bloke's playing one game and everyone's playing another inferior type of game. At times, Bontempelli actually takes you to that place.
I think one of the things that makes him really special, he doesn't feel the pressure like other players. So you watch how late he can delay the decision that he makes. So he can have an opposition defender running straight at him to tackle him, lays it to right at the last second before he disposes of the ball, gives him extra time, whereas the average player, myself, I'll put that in there, feels that pressure more than he does. He's a freak and having a ripping season. What
about your Bombers, Wisp? I know you're trying to play it down, but I tell you what, they are exciting when they're up and about. And they're centre square, and again, there's pros and cons of this. This is two midfields that said, we'll just lay it all out there and go at it. So the midfield stuff the clearance stuff from the centre was what was really significant in the end. So making the finals only last week or 2 weeks ago, it was said that it wasn't that important. They may have got there too early. I think it's very important.
Well, it's very important to them. And as a group of players...
the coach say it wasn't?
Well, he talks about
taking pressure off.
He talks about improvement all the time, though. Like that's what he's aiming to do. Like if you're in his position, you're saying, okay, I just want this team. And he said a post game again yesterday about the fact that he just wants them to be more consistent across 4 quarters of football, and everything else looks after itself. Now that's boring to say, but that's exactly what he thinks about where his team's at. Yesterday, you're right, they got great field position because of their centre bounce work, and then they kicked incredibly accurately. After quarter time, they upped the pressure around the ball. And they are a very fast side. They've got great speed.
They're quick.
They've got great speed around the ground, and that's what they're trying to build is that athleticism. I reckon there's still a gap in their defensive mechanisms and the way that they defend the field. And when the players come up, are they coming up high enough? They stay too low. They give too much space in the midfield. But that's still I think that's still a work in progress.
I like Francis forward. I know Peter Wright's going to get all the plaudits, and he should. Early in the year, I showed some stuff on him, Pete Wright, and he just wasn't competitive enough in the air and his follow-up stuff. So it's great that he's developed, and now he looks a really formidable player. But Francis gets to the right spot. He gets to the right spot, and I think he's something that they can work with because your back half, the back half of the Bombers is humming along beautifully.
Yeah, they're starting to sort of gel. I think there may be 1 or 2 players away from being able to complete that. I think at some time. Yeah, down the track, Zach Reed will force his way into that back six as well, and he's a really good, strong, athletic type. I think sort of like a Harris Andrews style sort of type of kid.
Nice. Hey, Carlton, Kane, you said last week, okay, they've had a really good win. They've beaten St Kilda. Let's see you back it up. How disappointing was that performance against the Gold Coast?
Yeah, I couldn't sort of believe what was unfolding in front of my eyes. There was a side that had a final spot on the line playing for their coach that was just completely outworked and out-hunted. And if you had no idea coming in which team was in which position on the ladder, there was one team that was so desperate and there was one team that wasn't. So that's going to... we don't want to sound like a broken record, but that's going to be the end of David Teague, unfortunately, because he hasn't been able to get these players to buy in when they don't have the footy. And there's a comfortability about this group that are satisfied, I think, just to be on an AFL list, to be on Instagram and social media and get a good paycheck. They don't want to win. It doesn't mean enough to them to have a really successful winning culture at that club. And it's going to take it's ingrained in this group. It's going to take some big shift, a giant one, to turn the attitudes of the players around.
What's their brand of football, Gary?
Oh, they like to attack. David Teague's been on the record as saying we want to attack, we want to be exciting, we want to kick goals.
Yeah.
And if the other team attack, we'll have to attack harder and kick one more goal. So, look, he hasn't backed away from it, but I'm sure there's some context around that. But the defensive aspect of the game is what, they can... The number of times they get 5-6 goals kicked on them in a row, that hasn't been addressed.
You have to like you talked about in your commentary of the weekend. I was listening to you talk about it. The point that you were making about Kane, and this is that at some point you have to challenge the opposition, and often it's because of but often it's the pressure that you apply to them. Okay, you got to say, okay, you got to ask questions of them. You got to say, okay, what can you do under pressure, this group of players? Just to finish on this point, right? We saw that last week when the Boomers were playing against the US of A. Now, the USA have got the greatest offensive lineup out there at the Olympic Games, okay? At one point, though, we were up by 15 points. It wasn't that they started to shoot the lights out. They actually started to play a really defensive brand of basketball and stopped the Australians from scoring first, and then they started to score.
So the quote was, and it was on the Richmond and North Melbourne game, and it is, if you don't ask the question, you'll never get the answer. And Richmond were classics in this. They didn't ask a question of the bottom team in the competition. They didn't put any pressure on. So all of a sudden, North Melbourne just owned the ball through the corridor, sliced and diced. No question. Damien Hardwick at halftime said, boys, let's put some pressure on and see whether this team can do that. They came out and within 5 minutes they asked the question, and right now the Kangaroos weren't up to answering it. So that's what is most disappointing about Carlton, Kane, and the Gold Coast Suns. On the back of a 98-point, uncompetitive, humiliating loss, they went into that game and didn't ask a question of the Gold Coast of whether they were going to be able to handle that sort of pressure again, because they just did not provide it.
Yep, and that's, it doesn't take any talent. That's the thing about it. It just takes a will and a desire to want to get the ball. In simple terms, how do we get the ball back off the opposition when they've got it? And how do we work as 18 players to do that as best as we possibly can? And that's why I think Carlton's a good job to get, and we're all speculating here, but through one pre-season, a defensively minded coach can fix a lot of those issues that we're seeing unfold before our eyes. So, and there was one centre bounce 11 minutes to go in that game. Scores are about level. Centre bounce so important. You watch which team wanted that ball more and which team didn't, and it was the Gold Coast Suns, and that was the difference.
I'll ask this question as we go to the break, because I'll ask it of our audience, who are the smartest around. Am I right in saying that Sam Walsh started the game on the half-back flank? I wasn't at the game, obviously. I'm trying to listen and watch. Can someone tell me, did he start the game on the half-back flank, Sam Walsh, and not in the middle where he's almost put himself, he has put himself into Brownlow medal calculation? Well, I'm sure we'll get that answer after this. Yep. This is the Monday Microscope with Kane Corns, Tim Watson, and myself,
Gary Lane. Gary Lane with two R's.
Big win to the Bombers. I tell you what, that performance yesterday against the top of the table Western Bulldogs was full of merit. Peter Wright comes out and kicks 7. The back line holds up beautifully, but the midfield keeps doing what the midfield's done for most of the season. And it's led by this man, Zach Merritt, who's been good enough to join us. Zach, well done. Fantastic result yesterday.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, it was. It was nice to finally beat a top 4 or 6 team. It's been something we've been trying to do all year, and I think we've got close a few times, but to actually get there was nice yesterday.
And Peter Wright kicking 7 straight is always going to be spoken about this week as the difference, and rightfully so. But what's the ceiling for that young man? He just I thought he was slow early, but as each game's wore on, he's got better and better.
Yeah, I think he was sort of pigeonholed potentially a little bit up there, and obviously Gold Coast had so much talent and had so many young kids come through, and he probably got pushed aside a little bit. So for him and coming to us, was sort of getting his confidence back in his own skill and ability. And we feel like he's been competing really strongly and bringing a lot of balls to ground for our smaller players. But it was nice for him to actually get a bit of reward for effort and take some marks and kick some goals himself, because he has been super reliable all year in playing for the team. But it was nice when he kicked some goals himself.
Hey, Zach, what was the focus at quarter time? Because it seemed after quarter time, Essendon sort of got on top, particularly in the contested area and more around the ball than what you had in the first quarter. The Bulldogs were moving the ball quite freely in that first quarter. So what area of concentration did you have at quarter time?
Yeah, we know how good the Doggies' hands are in close, and their ability to find the free is probably the best in the comp. And I thought we were probably a little bit off with our setups around the stoppages and then sort of float on from that with our inability to sort of pressure the ball. And obviously when you give that to a good team, it's pretty hard to stop. So fortunately, our back held up for us in that first quarter and we're able to resurrect those setups at quarter time. And I thought that sort of turned the game a little bit after that.
Gary was very quick in the piece to spot the work of Sam Draper earlier this year. Went really hard about what impact he was going to have this season. He's been outstanding, particularly around the centre bounce work. How important is it for you as a midfielder to have somebody like that who gets first hand on the ball and is able to do what he's able to do?
Yeah, it is amazing. I mean, he's a pretty aggressive young kid. He's only, I think, played 18 AFL games and probably played 20 or 30 Aussie rules games in juniors. So every time he sort of steps out on the training track or in games, he seems to just keep improving from strength to strength. So I guess he's probably one player in particular that you just don't know how good he can be moving forward if he keeps his body in good health and durable. And I feel like every game he plays, he learns something new about himself. So it's pretty exciting to have out there.
And obviously the coach, he talks about the improvement of the group, but I saw Darcy Parish, I heard Darcy Parish post-game talking about the fact that the guys are hell-bent on participating in the finals this year. How concentrated has that focus been on that part? I mean, the coach can talk about just the improvement of the group, but internally with the group of players about playing off in this final series?
Yeah, I think it's natural as you get to the pointy end. You obviously start to look at ladder predictors and I guess where you fit in that last day and the makeup of that. So it's only natural, but yeah, to be honest, not something that's really been talked about much. I think because we've been coming from so far back the whole year, we haven't really been worried about it because we thought we were probably going to struggle probably in the early part. But yeah, as it gets close, obviously we're in the hunt with probably 5 or 6 other teams and need a few probably results to go our way as well. So I guess for us, all we can really do is try and win and hope everything else fits into place. And I think Truck's been pretty clear that if we do make it, we want to be there to compete and actually have a crack at winning games at the pointy end as well, and not just make up the numbers. So if we do, we'll deserve it. And if we don't, we obviously won't.
Talking to Zach Merritt, superstar Essendon midfielder. What about Andy McGrath? Is he a chance of coming back over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, fingers crossed. He's been pretty impatient in rehab, which is always good to see. He's worked hard, and I think he should be hopefully back in the next week or two, and hopefully get Hep, and there's obviously Kyle Langford and a few others that potentially we get back. But the guys that have been in at the moment are playing their role really well, and pretty exciting to see guys like Sam Durham and Nick Cox and these sort of guys come in and display their role and get to play on some really good players in the Doggies and hopefully learn from that experience as well.
With Zach Merritt, the star from the Bombers, Zach, give us an insight into how you prepare for the Western Bulldogs, given you've got a midfield of yourself and Parrish and Stringer and Shield, so you're loaded. And then you look across the other group and it's Bontempelli and McRae and Dunkley and Smith and Treloar, so they're loaded. The attitude clearly yesterday was let's just take them on. How does that play out? Do you take a man when you haven't got the footy? Are you allocated a man when you haven't got the ball? Just give us an insight.
Yeah, it's a very long list for them. When you look at their team on paper, you're trying to work out how do you stop them all. But we scouted what they do around the ball and how good they are, and we felt like if we stuck to more on us and worried about us and getting us as much right as we could, that we'd be able to have a crack at them. And I think stoppage scores obviously went our way on the day, but that was probably based off just some scouting early in the week, a little bit of training on how we felt we could go about it, and then just bring attitude to not be intimidated or shy away from how good they are and just playing our way. And I thought on the night we were able to complement each other well enough, and although I think Bont and McRae got off there with the ball, I thought we were able to number off reasonably well and force some pressured kicks. So
just an extension to that, if at some stage, you guys were, I thought, fantastic. So your clearance work was great and your scoring from clearance, so you didn't have a great need to change it. If it wasn't working, would you make the adjustment or do you continue to back yourself in?
No, I think there's definitely room to adjust and adapt on the fly. I think having Dylan Clark in the team gives that option. I think his ability to go to a player that's running hot and eliminate them from the contest or just slow their run down is obviously a great role for us that we can go to if we need to. Obviously other guys can do that as well, but I think he's probably a great person to go there. It's just hard on the night when there's so many players with so many different strengths with the Doggies. It's pretty hard to know which one to stop at the right time. So, I guess as the mindset we sort of went in with, backing our own system in and hoping to get the job done, and obviously helps when Peter Wright takes all those marks. But, yeah, it was a great learning to play against such a good team.
Is it important when you have somebody that actually has been inside the Western Bulldogs like Gia now being in the coaching box for the Bombers?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it definitely helps having Gio, who's a very good coach in general, but to come across from the Dogs last year had some great insight. But also to have Jake Stringer, obviously there a few years ago now, but obviously understands individual players probably almost even better than what Gia does. So his insight was obviously awesome, and a lot of guys definitely went to him throughout the week to learn how they could play on the opposition player this week. So definitely beneficial, and I think guys took some great learnings into the game to beat their opponent.
Talking to Zach Merritt. Zach, I know you're a meticulous planner and you're a really curious young man, and you look to all different areas and aspects of sport to try and improve and try and borrow something from someone. I just wonder what your takeaway's been from the Olympic Games this year.
Yeah, I've been glued to the TV. I think it's it's probably the best sporting event in the world. It rolls around every 4 years, and I loved watching all the Aussies go about it. But for me, I really enjoyed the Katie Ledecky Titmus battle that went on early in the Olympics. I thought both of the women swam really well, and that competitive juices I think inspired a lot of people, including myself. So I just love that ability for how they work for those inches and those seconds to be made up in the pool. So that was probably the highlight for me.
And leadership, are you enjoying more of a leadership role there at the club this year as well?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it doesn't really feel much different. Obviously, the title's been there a few more times this year with Pep missing a couple of games. But, yeah, that doesn't really change too much, just trying to influence as many guys around me as possible. I think that's definitely helped, and I've grown a fair bit in that area. But I think we're having a lot of other guys as well step up massively this year. And to see guys like Laverty, Ridley, the list could go on and on, but Parrish and these guys stepping up and playing really consistent footy, I think help share the load across the group, and we're seeing the results follow.
Hey, Zach, how are your young guys holding up? It's been a long year. Hopefully it extends beyond the next 2 weeks, but when you've got young kids that come into the side, you wonder how they're going to see out a whole season. From your eye, how are they looking?
Yeah, it's amazing to see. They didn't play any footy last year, obviously in COVID, so the fact that they're still rocking up to training each week and getting through games has been really strong. Obviously, I understand every club's got young players that have been through that same process. So I think for our guys to keep getting games in this first year is going to be enormous moving forward. But I'm sure they're pretty tired. But I think the enthusiasm and the energy they're still trying to bring has been amazing. And fingers crossed they can keep bringing that.
Have you taken the dog for a walk yet this morning?
I'm about to roll that now, Tim, so I'm sure we'll see you soon.
Where do you stroll? Down the, you're not allowed to say, around the very affluent area that the Wiz frequents?
Yeah, I think the Wiz normally has the headphones in and strolls past and gives the handshake. But, definitely we'll roll out shortly.
Yeah, he's got a lovely dog too. Very nice dog.
He's the mayor of that Bayside suburb, so if you got permission, you'll be right. Hey, we love watching you, mate. I've loved watching you. I know Tim does as well, and we get a lot of messages that say you are in All-Australian contention as well, and there's no question about that. So keep up the good work. Big 2 weeks coming up.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
On you, Zach.
Zach Merritt there joining us. The caller of the year, don't forget, and we're going to throw the lines open now before we get to Gazy. The 2021 Toyota Hilux could be yours. You didn't get my beautiful intro.
I did. All merit.
Full of merit.
Full of merit, yeah. Nice.
I don't even know I said it. Andrew Gaze is one of our favourites. Every time we get to speak to him, we smile. He makes us feel good. We have a laugh. We take the P155 out of him, and it's great fun because he takes it in such great order. But I'll tell you what, of the Olympic moments that we've all enjoyed over the past couple of weeks, his commentary with Andrew Bogut and the basketball's been insightful and right on the money. But the emotion that he showed on Saturday night with our great friend Andrew Marr in trying to explain to the rest of us who've never had the privilege of representing Australia at an Olympics game was absolutely superb, and I loved it. I loved the vulnerability in it all, and he's been good enough to join us, and I say that from the heart, Gazy. Well done, my friend.
I really appreciate that because it's one of those moments when you lose a bit of control, and normally we are under control, but sometimes those huge things happen in your life, and although I wasn't there with the boys, it still meant a whole lot to me, and I fully appreciate and acutely aware of why this happens, and that's why it gets emotional, because there's so many people along the journey that create these opportunities, and felt really proud and privileged.
Andrew, I back up exactly what Gary had to say then. 100%, my friend.
That's not what you said off the air when I was just having a quick chat to you, but I appreciate when the red light's on, the true honesty comes out.
Well, Gazy, Tim did say to me that he's taken over your commercial opportunities. West, you've had a couple of inquiries?
Yes, Sorbent have been on the line. And also, I believe there's going to be a remake of The Crying Game. Out Forrest Whitaker in Andrew Gaze.
Clearly, it was a hell of an audition I put up there. But no, I know deep down in your heart, Tim, that you're a bit of a softie as well.
There's nothing I love more than a grown man breaking down and crying like that on national TV, Gaze. You know that better than anybody. What did Lindsay have to say when you chatted to him?
Oh, mate, he was his usual humble self, and just wanted to talk about how awesome it is for our game and our sport, and recognition for all the work that other people have gone into it. But it's hard to actually talk to me, old man, these days, because I do get very emotional about it, and that's why I was pretty upset, or it hit me as hard, because I know his role that he's played. When you talk to him, he goes back to 1956 when he was playing footy in the exhibition game on Australian rules football, and still talking about the Ken Watson, the coach, and Keith Miller, who coached in 1960, and all the things that went on in Tokyo when he was over there, and his teammates, and building stadiums so we could get people involved in the sport and all those things. So for me, I get more acutely aware again of the history and how these things come about.
One of the great things, for me, and I think for a lot of other people watching that also is, and you talk about Paddy Mills. I mean, you articulated it beautifully what it meant to this group of players, but we get to seeing these guys playing for teams in the NBA are making a lot of money, and often that's what people talk about. He's just signed a deal worth $8 million. But then at the heart of that performance on Saturday night was what it meant to him to be an Australian, to represent the Boomers, that type of thing. And it is just one of the wonderful things that's exposed about the Olympic Games.
Oh, 100%. And it's something that is instilled in, certainly from my experiences with the Boomers, and I dare say from the response we saw from Paddy, it's instilled in us when you become part of the program. You don't get you don't get any money for playing or representing your country at the Olympics or playing for Australia. Period. It's not. You're not going to derive an income from it, and you're doing it for other reasons. And to see Paddy express himself like he did, not just after this Olympics, but right throughout the journey, and what it means to do something that represents Australia, in his case, the Indigenous community more specifically as well, that it's a beautiful thing that you're doing this to show the world and express to the rest of the globe that, hey, this is what we're about here in Australia, and this is how we go about it, and I think he did it magnificently.
And just talk us through the influence that Brian Goorjian has had on this particular group of players as well.
Well, he was back there in 2004, and a lot of these guys he started the journey with, went away, went to China and was very much a part of the China basketball community, and now comes back, and as they go towards the end of their careers, he's now here to share this experience and guide them through to a historic moment in Australian basketball. And he's had an enormous impact on basketball since he arrived here back in 1978. He's more dinky-die than a lot of us, and I think that his involvement and the way in which that his history in the game has evolved to this point is also telling, because he deserves a reward like this because of the things and the contribution that he's been able to make to the game over many years.
And Gazy, I know you're busy, so we won't hold you too much longer, but I distinctly remember you I don't know how long ago it was, 4 years. It was on this station talking about the state of basketball and your concerns for it here in this country. How much of a shot in the... I mean, we've got a fantastic, viable NBL now that's going from strength to strength, and just how much of a difference in the space of 5 years is our competition here in Australia now, and what will this do for it?
Yeah, back then the concerns was about our WNBL and an NBL because we had teams coming and going, and clearly the model wasn't right. And there's never been a concern about the foundation of the game, highly participated. But we know in order to get, and not just in basketball, but in any sport, in order to get those magical moments that we see in world championships and the Olympic Games, the pyramid has to be balanced and there needs to be solid foundations right throughout. And for us, it was at the top that was actually had some difficulties. But since, like you say, over the last 5 or 6 years, that's been fixed. We've got players in the NBA, we've got players in Europe, and we've got an unbelievably vibrant and successful NBL competition. So someone picking up a basketball at a very young age now can see a very clear pathway, and which was highlighted by our result on the weekend. So it's good times in our sport, and hopefully we've got a bronze this time, but hopefully next time it'll be up on that podium just a little bit higher.
Gazy, I know you've got to go, but we spoke to you when we found out that Ben Simmons wasn't going to represent Australia, and you spoke magnificently about the opportunity that he was going to miss. I couldn't help but think on Saturday night when I was watching all that, what it was that Ben Simmons actually did miss out on. Did that thought cross your mind as well again?
Yeah, absolutely. But I haven't lost hope that these types of moments, and you start to get educated and to get an understanding. It's like with anything, particularly we're going through these days. When you see it, you feel the emotion of it, and most importantly, you get an education on what it's all about. Then I think you can get the outcomes that I think are going to be helpful for all. And in Ben's situation, I'm sure he'd be watching that and be super proud of the guys that were playing and the sport, and see the joy and camaraderie and everything that goes along with these types of performances for our basketball team, but the entire Olympic squad. I would be surprised if that doesn't motivate him, and he continues to want to work towards trying to pull on a green and gold jersey, because, as we said last time, I think it would be enormously beneficial for him, and truly one of the joys in his career would be to be a part of a team like we just saw with our Boomers in Tokyo.
Well said, as always. You've not missed every single time. You've been on point, and we love it, and we thank you for sharing it along the way.
I really appreciate it, guys. I know deep down we had a bit of a laugh, but maybe I'm being con, but I feel the support and love that you guys have. So
you know we love you. You know.
Can't guarantee it'll be there next time, but it certainly is this time. Good on you, mate. Thanks for that.
Thanks,
Andrew
guys.
Case.